I got a little notoriety when I was young for being able to play a lot like Eddie Van Halen. I was a hedge fund guy, but I would get asked by his management to go to guitar shows and play his guitar through his amp. I mean, the same thing we talked about Erik Prince earlier. Here's the same guy. He had his life's work basically taken from him. And, you just keep going. You keep going. I look up to those guys. I'm a huge Clapton fan. If you've ever heard, he recorded this on that show.
Ron Dodson is one of our favorite repeat guests. He's a true Renaissance man, a guitarist, a pilot, a hedge fund manager, and a living example of what it looks like to be interested in every aspect of this world. Please enjoy.
People are waking up to the absolute fiscal disaster that's going on in the country. If you look at the interest, I was looking at the St. Louis Fed numbers this morning, and we have reached, all the graphs that look like the CO2, hockey stick graph. That's what our interest payments look like right now. That could, we all thought, 2030 is when forget the debt. Well, don't forget it. But really, it's the unfunded liabilities that's the huge thing. If you add it all up, it's $200 trillion, more than the collective summation of the world GDP throughout history. That never gets paid off. But at some point, that starts pressing upon the president. We all thought maybe it's 2030. A good friend of mine used to be the number 2 at the Dallas Fed, and she says, no, it's now. It's happening now.
The time is now.
The time is now.
I mean, just in the last few weeks, I've seen like Steve Ballmer, Bill Ackman, like people ringing the bell on that issue across the board in spaces that they weren't before.
Yeah, and part of that I think is politically, because I think the goal is to try to hem in. It looks like Trump's going to win, at least if the election's fair. And
give him a bomb, hand him over a bomb.
Well, it's just hemming him in. Sure. For instance, how do you hem in a president? Well, how'd you hem in W and completely change the trajectory I think he would have been on in his presidency? Well, you get, in his case, you have this massive terrorist attack, which really changed the topic. So you can do something militarily and you can do something fiscally. And so I'm a little bit shocked, a little bit encouraged that we haven't done something silly in Ukraine to provoke that. I'm shocked and encouraged, although we've still got 2 weeks, that something crazy hasn't been done with Iran. Right. So those two things would hem in a president hard, and he would have almost no wiggle room in that, because once the shooting starts, the court of public opinion is just gonna be rally around however it's framed by the last guy. So I think the hypothetical conflict with Iran is insane. If Israel wants to do whatever Israel wants to do, that's fine, I guess. Although it would be bad for us in the short term. But us going to war with Iran, I think is crazy. And then
the other crazy thing we were talking about on the way here is just how we've all, on both sides, including himself, we've all written off Biden.
Yeah, poor guy is still president. Nobody. It's such a lie.
He's on a beach.
Not even on the wayside. He's on the wayside in a different dimension. No one cares about him. He's not even doing appearances.
Yeah, who's running that? Who's running that show? Exactly. Anthony Blinken. I've heard that.
Yeah, sure.
A couple of the old Obama apparatchiks are in that White House.
Sure.
The conspiracy theory is that Obama's basically still running things, and I've got no hard evidence that that's the case, but I've surely got nothing that says that's not the case. I think the status quo is and what the cathedral wants is a situation where really party is somewhat important, but the office of the president has been made basically irrelevant.
Right.
Yeah.
And so there is no chief executive that runs the executive branch. And that's, if Trump has a mission, hopefully that's it. I would love to see, DeSantis in his, I would love to see DeSantis as chief of staff. I think he's really, his strength is not in national office, but as an operator. If I was a private equity guy, he'd be running something. Oh, we're having problems with this unit. Hey, will you go run that for 6 months?
Send Ron.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think that's, I think he is part of that. Again, he's an operator. And the fact that an operator rose to prominence politically in this country is great hope. But of course, that's Florida.
Sure.
Florida and Texas are kind of different cases.
There's a quote from Nixon. I think it was in a letter he wrote, of him saying, like, now is the last chance for us to keep the government from getting so big that sort of the blob Borg controls everything, and it's no longer.
Well, that was his decision to create the EPA.
Okay.
So everybody gets on Nixon for two things, about the gold standard and about the EPA, and they really don't understand either one. The gold standard was we were moved off the gold standard for all practical purposes with FDR, and Bretton Woods, which was the resultant situation. Nixon was to the point where basically we would have to ship off all our gold. It was coming to a breaking point because of the creation of a Eurodollar and some other things that are way too technical for this issue. But that wasn't Nixon. Nixon wasn't the impetus of us going off the gold standard. He did what we had to do. And Pekoske, full circle, Pekoske actually speaks of this. And I'd love to talk to him about it, because he says that intentionally or unintentionally, Nixon paved the way because of the ability for a reserve currency to use leverage to control the world and advance the empire. That was the thing that needed to happen. Now, I don't think that was Nixon's choice, but with the EPA, he was dealing with 50 different environmental agencies in the States.
So he was consolidating.
And so the idea is, I have to consolidate this so that in my second term, I can squash it.
Gotcha.
And you see that this was his Nixon against the deep state, is really that was the theme, going to be the theme of his, because he won in the most historic landslide. He destroyed, he lapped the field in that deal, and had an absolute mandate. And so this is why Watergate happened, and why he was railroaded. But the EPA, just quickly on your deal, you're exactly right. But he created the EPA in order to control the bureaucracy rather than compete against it.
Do you think it would be feasible for Trump, if he were elected in a landslide, to do what Nixon had planned to do? Are you optimistic that that's even possible at this point?
Well, I think getting J.D. Vance makes it more plausible. And the reason I say that is that you've got a guy who, okay, you're going to railroad Trump. Okay, this is who's on deck. And he's got 2 donuts on the back. This is a guy who's capable, whose political capabilities, I think, have been manifest on display. I mean, this is a talented politician, truly a man of the right. In other words, that governing is for the purpose of ordered liberty, not atomistic liberty. And so Vance absolutely makes it more capable. Trump's talents are not in being an operator. He's always had guys who do that stuff for him. Trump's talents is in gathering attention, getting a ball rolling. He's maybe the best that's ever lived at that. So the question becomes, I don't like who he got to run his campaign. Those guys, I think that pair is not principled. And the question is, but those campaign managers tend to have a big say in the staffing of the coming administration. So the question just becomes is who staffs the administration and who does Trump surround himself with? If it's the same old, then probably not much happens. I mean, it's better than having the alternative for sure. But if he allows it, if he operates it again like the CEO of a private equity company, where you have true operators go in with these goals and these, for instance, Musk has talked about having an office of efficiency or whatever.
DOGE, Department of Government Efficiency.
Of government efficiency. Yeah. That's great if he has real power. Does Elon Musk get confirmed by the Senate? So can he have a real cabinet level office? I don't think he gets a cabinet level office. I think he becomes the czar, but czars don't have any power. I mean, so again, the question, I think there's reason to be hopeful. I'm not unabashedly optimistic, but Vance, that's a great step in the right direction,
right? Because
I think that's insurance against him getting Watergated.
Because the guy behind him is just
'cause the guy behind him is that's Big Brother in a sense.
Yeah. I was hyped to see Vance on that ticket.
It was a brilliant move, and boy, he got just destroyed among all the normies about picking him. You just see here's and you got to give it to Trump. The Harris people, whether it was her or whoever, I don't know who the real decision maker is and all that, but they picked Tim Walz and he picks JD Vance. That's just the guy. Say whatever you want about Trump. The guy has church bells, I mean, he is not afraid. And I think that's what the country responds to is here is a man who acts like a man and is not afraid.
Yeah.
Again, Eric, speaking of which, a guy who's like that, who I'd love to see involved is Erik Prince, can get him as sec def or whatever. I don't care. He's going to do good things wherever it is.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the type of guy who would be capable of coordinating a war against the gangs or deportation or anything like that.
Well, I think
in the IM piece with Ben Braddock, he talked. Yeah. Braddock asked him about the war against the cartels, and Erik there, and famously another maybe we were on our podcast. He said, "I have a plan, but I'm going to keep it close to the chest, just in case."
Yeah, he says, "I know exactly how I would do it, but the plan would be compromised if I
kind of describe it." But the point being, he knows he's a man of action.
I would raise this hypothetical. I would say that we would be more. I would say we would be far more justified in nuking northern Mexico than we were in nuking Japan. And I'm not for nuking. Let me make this perfectly clear. I'm not for nuking anyone. I sure as heck wasn't not for what we did in Japan, either the firebombing, we killed however many million in one night, or the nuking. But that is a clear and present danger on our border.
Yeah.
And instead we play all these games all over. I heard this point made yesterday. We have how many hundred military bases around the world in some form or fashion. It's above 400. I think it might be as much as 600. How many are in Canada or Mexico? Zero.
Really?
Zero.
We don't have
not a single one.
Yeah, craziness.
Is that weird?
Yeah.
Seems weird.
Yeah, it's weird.
We've got a base in Cuba,
right?
But not in Canada or Mexico.
Yeah, that's nuts. I mean, you saw this, I guess, most clearly in the recent Hurricane Helene disaster and how North Carolina, Georgia, Florida were affected, and it was almost like you couldn't make this stuff up. You'd get a video of people's houses being destroyed, and 5 seconds later, a tweet about how the Ukraine or Israel or some other country was getting another $1 billion in aid. And also FEMA doesn't have funds for you.
Right, because they've been spent.
Euro citizens.
Yeah.
Because they've been spent resettling migrants in,
Right.
Ohio, whatever that small town in Springfield, Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just the most backward. You can't make it stuff. It was just so insane to see.
Well, citizenship means nothing anymore.
Yeah.
What you're and the duty either way. Again, we spoke about the liberal ideas that I am subject to. I have zero unchosen bonds, right? But so I have no duty moving upstream, but certainly the duty moving downstream has been completely lost. A state owes its chief loyalty to its citizens, but we don't really even have citizenry anymore. We're just people. We're economic units, fungible economic units that happen to. We're all permanent residents. That's all we are.
Mm-hmm.
And
taxable permanent residents.
Global citizens within the United States.
Global citizens who happen to live here.
Yeah.
Like my in-laws are Canadians. They're permanent. They have their permanent residency. They've been here since 1970, 71. And, they can't vote, can't have all these other, privileges and everything. But that's really, are they really that different? The country seems to treat them no differently.
Sure.
So that's a weird deal, because if you don't have citizens, I don't think the long term, you have to get more despotic in order to rule a non-citizenry. And if everyone's not a citizen, the only way you control them, you don't control them through the contract. It's not Hobbesian of I'm going to protect you, you owe me loyalty. If you're not going to have that, then the only way you can control them is through despotic action. So really, that seems to follow. That seems to me what is following with what Penkovsky was writing about this post-liberal reality.
It's not so that you're saying. It's what you're saying, that the dynamic is not between citizen and sovereign. Is not who do you owe loyalty to.
Right.
It's more like who's gonna beat you if you don't obey.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. You're the dog chained out back, and it's now. Hey, that dog out back on that chain's long enough to keep any bad guys out of my from my back door. But that dog's got no real freedom, right? It's not a pet. It's not a citizen of the household. It's not a family member,
Sure.
Like my two puppies that are peacefully asleep downstairs.
Nice. What we've talked a lot about the negatives. What positives have you seen in the last year? Positives, things that give you hope since we last chatted on the pod.
Well, I think the people are waking up again. I see more cognition among people who are online. I see more cognition of the real problems, that citizenship is important, that we're not just economic units, that the government, the fiscal issues are real. But again, somebody like Vance coming to national prominence is a huge plus. In the last year, seeing what the governor of Texas did when he acted. Now, it was a tiny little thing.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
But you would have never seen that before, that action on the border. Again, this is something that's been memory hold, because we don't want that, So, and I think that's the direction you're going to see, regardless of who wins. I think you're going to see more de facto federalism, especially among the red-leaning states. And so I think that was hugely positive. Are those and my Texas Rangers won the World Series. So
There you go.
Green flag after green flag.
yeah, no, I played college baseball. I wasn't any good. But so let's not go down that road. But I'm a huge baseball fan, and it was fun to see my my Rangers finally win that. So those are, in all seriousness, there's some positive. I mean, what Rufo's been able to do, I think, is a positive. Again, that's in Florida mostly. I think what Tucker's been able to do, in other words, give voice to a lot of the things that were kind of just unspeakable. You just didn't talk about these things. What Daryl's been able to do, my buddy Daryl Cooper, subscribe to his pod if you aren't already. Daryl has been, and he's getting he got just pilloried by even people on the right, but he's willing, but the fact that he was able to bring up these very, very difficult questions about our received history, these load-bearing myths, and rocket to the number one podcaster in the world, man, that's pretty huge. That's a very good sign. People are waking up. And it I'm so proud of him. My gosh, I'm so proud of him.
Yes, yeah, Daryl's awesome.
He's a good guy. Was there anything that surprised you when you saw Tucker live and spent some time with those guys? Any perspective change after that evening?
Well, I mean, Roseanne Barr was his guest,
right?
And Roseanne is, man, she's a lit candle.
Yeah,
she is. But what was cool to see here was Tucker having what amounted to an independent political rally,
right?
About just the desire for people to celebrate that which is historically good, order, that we look after our own, not because we hate anybody else, but because if you don't look like, you can't live that donut preference, where you love people who are separated from you. And Jesus talks about this. Hey, better a neighbor who's near than a brother who's far away. You got to take care of this, or you can't, or you have no foundation to take care of everything else. But so Tucker's rally and seeing people, there wasn't a hint of mean-spiritedness about any of it. This wasn't a fire-breathing, torches lit kind of group. This was people wanting to laugh and have a good time and listen to Roseanne Barr be Roseanne Barr. But even she was celebrating. Here's somebody who's, she's this older Jewish lady who has seen and been through a lot, had her own mental health struggles, but wants to celebrate that which is historically good. And everybody, this was, I would bet that audience was 95 to 98% Christian. And yet here they are celebrating this lady and saying, hey, we're with you, because she wanted to say, hey, this is good and this is evil. What I was struck about with Tucker is first of all, his natural talent, much like Vance, his natural political talent of to read a room and to take the conversation, or take the the vibe of the room and kind of go along with it and amplify it in a good way. But then also visiting with him, here's a guy who you immediately recognize. You could tell he's going to size you up for about 30 seconds. And if you can tell it's very, because of all these other things, very high level of intuition.
Yes.
Huge EQ. Huge.
Yeah.
And then you're either with him or again. I mean, he treated me like I was his best friend. I mean, I met him a minute before.
Right.
And he's like, oh, I miss great. And, kind of cussing like a sailor, but in a funny way. I mean, he just, and then his daughter, who's about the age of my oldest, I think, 22, 23, probably somewhere in that age, who was there, she said, hey, Daddy, it's time for us to do this next thing. And he was like, he had a pet name, sweetheart is some pet name for her. And the bond you could see there, and that goes, as a girl dad, that goes a long way with me about somebody, the genuineness of, because you can you can talk about quality time and intentional parenting and all this stuff, but nothing is it's just time and that emotional bonding where you care for somebody and they care for you and you're on the same team. So that spoke. I was like, oh, this guy is not just a great showman. He's not just a great reader of the room. He's not just a political, has all this political talent. This guy's one of us.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wildly personable.
Oh,
where
crazy.
Yeah. Where we had a chance to get a quick picture with him in a line of people ahead of the event. And I've been through these lines before. I expected to jump up, get the picture, walk off. He was like, what's your name? What do? You live here? What do you think? Like, he was not going to let me go until he had like actually talked to me, which was wild.
And Tucker and I are about the same age. He might be about 18 months younger than me. And I was just struck by, golly, how healthy and young he looked. I was like, holy cow, dude, can I talk to you? Can I talk to whoever your doc is? So, not to fanboy, he's just a guy, but here he's been through all the stuff he's been through. And, he's admitted in his own biography about his troubles with alcohol and workaholism and all this stuff. Been married to the same lady this whole time, loves her, speaks highly of his obvious workaholic dad, but just the things that you talk about when you talk about basic, he makes fun of his own Episcopalianism as this big crutch, but he seems to, as brass tacks, he seems to live like a Christian. He's got a great relationship with his wife, his kids. He works hard, but he takes great joy in it. And he's loyal to the people who are loyal to him. That sounds pretty good.
Yeah. That last point you made, that's what struck me the most about him.
Yeah.
This last year. I won't go into all the details, but there's so many people you can imagine who are public figures who have a big platform, and the heat comes and they back away. The spice comes. Somebody says, "Do you denounce this and that?" And they're like, "Oh yeah, actually, I denounce it. Put out a statement, whatever." Tucker's a real one.
Well, and I was reading. My wife is studying Gideon we're studying Judges right now in this Bible study she's in, and we went through Gideon, and Gideon has this very interesting career. But he gets to the end and he starts like trying to set up a dynasty for himself. And he starts doing, he kind of the worm starts turning. My wife is pointing this out to me last night. By the way, for the listener, I'm married way over my head. I mean, she's unbelievable. Like this, anyway.
This house was basically built by
basically my wife built this, the interior, all this.
Right.
We've got these beautiful hardwood floors in here, and she refinished this. She did these hardwood floors, this bird's eye maple cabinetry. She did it. I mean, I'm just a finance, political theology guy out here. But anyway, she's pointing out all this stuff. And it struck me that, you asking about Tucker, he's not like that. He's not trying to set up some dynasty for himself. He's trying to take care of his family and do what he's good at. But I am you just talking about him here reminds me of my wife pulling me aside last night. Wow, this was blowing my mind about Gideon and everything. So if you're a young guy, find a good wife. It's worth more than gold. And that's not just me, that's the Bible, but it's true. It's true. Find a very, very good wife who will, it's easy on the right to get, it's easy on the right at times to get, because there is a political divide in this country between men and women, it's easy to lapse into some unfortunate misogyny. And what we need is just a biblical perspective on men and women are different. They're meant to be different. You find a good wife and they will make you a better man. That's how it works. It's how it works.
Yeah. Did you watch Tucker's interview with Chris Cuomo? This was maybe, I don't know.
No,
3
I
or 4
have
months
not.
ago. It was really good, but it was striking there in that they had both been fired from major networks.
Right.
And Cuomo, and Tucker was very kind. He wasn't drawing this parallel at all, but just as you watch it, Cuomo got fired And he was telling Tucker, like, oh man, I got so down and I was drinking and I was just laying around at home and I was so depressed and couldn't get back on the horse. Versus Tucker, who was, on a golf cart with his wife, the day after he got fired.
Really didn't miss a beat.
Didn't miss a beat.
Try to figure out a way, the way I understand it, I'm sure you guys know more details, but sounds like made sure his compatriots that were on his team said, hey, let's figure out how to all keep the band together and let's go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That just seems like something that's incredibly hard to do. It's incredibly unique.
I think just God raises up. I mean, the same thing we talked about Erik Prince earlier. Here's the same guy. Same thing. He had his life's work basically taken from him. And, you just keep going. You keep going. I look up to those guys. I had a big disagreement. My family business is in apartments. And I won't belabor this story like I'm want to do everything. I'll try to keep it quick. But in this, we had a ton of apartments in 2000, the 2005 timeframe, and they were all 100% leveraged. I don't recommend it. With Lehman. So we were making so much money. But we had California and some foreign money coming in at a 4.5 cap, which is very high. That's a very high valuation. I'll just leave it at that. You real estate guys know what I'm talking about. And so I made a presentation to the C-suite of our organization. We need to sell everything. We could put a lot of money. It's not important, the amount, but several $100 million in the bank. And I said, because it's coming, we've got this, you fog a mirror, get a mortgage thing. And it was not a sustainable deal. And I was ushered out of my own family business for making that presentation. That, that's not, we're here to own and manage, and your little predictions of where the market's going to go don't really matter. And, if it's 4.5 now, maybe we get 3.5 in a year from
right.
So that went to zero within the family wealth with it, from several $100 million. And so I went through that deal of being very like, what do I do? And I mean, I ended up, that's when I went on my own to do the hedge fund thing and had great success. My just killed it in 2008 and was in some magazines and stuff. So God took care of me, but I can relate to that existential thing of, wait a minute, this is kind of my life's work and I'm doing this and I was right.
Right.
And you just get, that can happen. And you can get pretty, and I didn't react very well to it. Don't ask Jody about it. I did not react well to it. And it is but God was faithful. And you just got to get back on the horse and go. But don't expect, if you're smart and you work hard and you're right, to just have reward and riches come your way every time. It doesn't always work out that way.
Speaking of your family, you grew up here in Dallas, right?
I did. I was born in West Texas, in San Angelo. My wife says, I was there for 4 hours. Now I was there for about 8 weeks, and then moved to the mid cities. But had basically been in Dallas County the rest of the time, save grad school. I went to grad school down in Austin at UT. What
kind of childhood did you have? Like, what was your family like?
My dad left when I was 6, and their divorce was final when I was 7. But I had an idyllic childhood. I didn't know any better. I had friends, lived on a street with a ton of other kids. Loved the elementary school, and then the junior high I went to. It was in Irving, Texas, where Texas Stadium used to be. University of Dallas is there, and played baseball every day with these, my friends up and down the block, and we rode bikes, and it was an incredibly happy childhood. Could have been a lot better, but I didn't know any different. My mom worked.
Did you grow up in a Christian home?
kind of.
Sure.
Christmas and Easter.
Okay.
But my grandfather, my dad's dad, was a deeply devout man. And because my folks were divorced and my mom had to work, I spent a ton of time with him. And he was very devout. I saw him stay up every night till 1 or 2 a.m. reading his Bible. And he was, if the doors were open, he was at church. And so in that way, my granddad had a huge impact on me. And he was born in 1903. So I tend to be a man, in a lot of ways, a man of a different era, so to speak, because emotionally, all the things, what it means to be a man, all really came from him. And he was just he did all kinds of different things. He was a minor league baseball player in the 1920s, and then he was a fireman, and then he ran a funeral home. He was a mortician. He owned a pet store, but always coached. It's where I get my love for coaching. I coach soccer on the side, although I'm kind of retired now. But then he also he ended up being chief fireman for Bell Helicopter in the late 60s and early 70s before his retirement. So he was the guy in the foil suit on the flight line that would test all the Hueys and the Cobras before they went over to Vietnam. And he was just a great man. He was a great man. A sinner like we all are, but a great man. And he had a huge impact on me, and as did my grandmother, his wife, who stayed married to all those years. And she was a kind of a math genius. Didn't finish high school, but on the side ran the books for 2 different banks on ledger paper because she could do all this math in her head. It's the most unbelievable thing. And later, after she died, I asked my dad about this, and she was the type who you could give her a whole long string of numbers, she could recite it back from memory backwards, kind of thing. She was just a savant. So those two, that's where my love for numbers came from. So those very much a Christian home.
Right.
Southern Baptist. I was baptized Southern Baptist. I had to accept John Calvin into my heart later.
That's right. Any other traits from your grandfather that stood out from you that were kind of key traits that he had and taught you?
Well, just being around aviation, he'd sneak me to get flights on the Hueys, and I never got in a Cobra. Didn't even get to sit in a Cobra. I wanted that.
Wait, back up. He sneaked you onto a Huey?
Onto a Huey and then onto a 47. The Bell 47's the MASH helicopter, the bubble front.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I had a bunch of rides in Hueys and 47s. So that was my love for aviation, and why I became learned to fly, be a pilot. I went through undergraduate pilot training, the initial part of that with Texas Air National Guard, and tried to be an F-16 pilot. But then Clinton got elected, and that slot went away. Actually, it didn't go away. It ended up going to a junior NASA pilot, and he was more qualified than me.
Okay.
Right. But that's how they go. So funny story. So Lieutenant Colonel Lonnie Goodson was the CO down at the 182nd. I got my patch over here. I'd go get it if I wouldn't break in the framing. But 182nd, the Fighting Alamos, or the Texas Gunfighters.
You can get up because the microphone will keep recording.
Yeah, hold on one second.
You're good.
Let me go get this. So I just happened to see this patch. Texas Gunfighters, Texas Air Guard, 182nd.
Yeah, let me zoom in. Yeah, there you go.
Tactical Fighter Squadron.
Yeah,
and here's the grain. So, this goes on your jacket or your baggie, your flight suit. But then when you fly, if you're flying feet wet, you take all your stuff off so you can't be identified other than your, rank, and your rank is sewn in on your epaulets. But anyway, so Clinton gets elected. And the edict comes down that they need to send that all the guard squadrons need their next, and guard is very different from active duty. Guard is, it's like a fraternity, because you're not going to get moved around and stationed. You're basically in this group for 20 years. Mm-hmm. I think the oldest pilot was the oldest pilot was in his 50s when I was there. I know Lieutenant Colonel, and he was late 40s, the CO, but I think the oldest pilot was 52, 53, flying F-16s. Pretty awesome.
That's super cool.
And but you're in this fraternity, and the word went down that the next, so the way you populate your squadrons in the Air Guard is, and it's similar in the Air Force Reserve, but in the Air Guard is, you've got guys who apply who are coming out of active duty and want to fly, and they can do that. But then every 2 years, you also have what's called UPT, so undergraduate pilot training, and you can send a guy either from a non-com and you want him to be, you're going to give him a commission and send him to pilot training, or like me, I took the AFOQT, the Air Force Officers Qualifying Test, and did very well. And I was a pilot already and had done a bunch of aerobatics. And you can apply, and I applied to 30 different squadrons, but got offered a slot with the Texas C-130 guys who used to be at Navy Dallas. I don't even know if that squadron exists anymore. But these were the guys, because they flew F-16s, that I really wanted to fly with. Them and the old, the politically incorrect name of the Air Guard squadron down in New Orleans that I won't say because it is politically incorrect, but it was their official name. But anyway, but they had a slot coming up, and I went through the whole deal, and then but the word came down after Clinton got elected that they were going to send a woman. You needed to send a woman the next UPT slot. And these guys, and it's a fraternity, and these guys, well, we can't. How are we going to redo our entire ready room, our locker room, how's this going to work? So they ended up finding a pilot who was at Ellington, which is where that's where all the astronauts have their T-38s. And this guy was trying to get into the astronaut program, very, very qualified pilot. They ended up sending him, and it was perfect fit, but I lost my slot. So I still have my -34 and -1 over there somewhere.
So how old were you when you almost got your slot?
Well, I was running up against so you have to get commissioned by the time you're 27 and a half.
Okay.
And I was running up against that, and I knew the time was running out. So I basically dropped out. But I did go through, they were the only Air Guard squadron in the nation that had a simulator. And so, to make me feel good, the CO was such a great guy. And he goes, hey, we don't ever use this thing. You want to go through the full training deal on the simulator. So I actually went through 82 hours of simulator training.
Nice.
And they gave me another patch for that that's around here somewhere.
Yeah, that's cool.
And a jacket and all this kind of stuff. It was fun.
That's cool.
It was fun.
But so you obviously, now you're in a hedge fund, family office, all this stuff. At the time you were thinking about being a pilot.
Yeah.
You grew up playing baseball. Did you want to be a professional baseball player? Why did you think you'd be doing growing up?
Well, when I was doing the pilot thing, so we didn't have class on Fridays. This is when I was in grad school. And half the Fridays I would go down to San Antonio, where the Kelly Air Force Base is, where the squadron was. Every other Friday I would come up here, and a buddy of mine was working for a hedge fund in a derivative shop, Regal Asset Management, and I would hang out at their office all day. And I just had confidence. I had an offer from Solomon Brothers back when that existed, and a couple other places to go to New York. But I had faith that God was either going to make me a pilot, and I had to go active duty for 2.5 years. That's the entry into the Air Guard. You go through training, and then you have a assignment, and then you get placed in your squadron. And I would either do that, or I would go into I love the hedge fund. I have an MBA, but it was really a master's in derivative finance. And so I love that. And the guy offered me a job at the hedge fund. And so I took that, and off we went.
Nice.
Yeah.
On the side, though, you had a career as a musician.
I did. Yeah.
So I want to hear about this. Yeah.
Before that. So when I was in college, I did a lot of studio time. I was on some commercials and songwriters and stuff, and spending a lot of time at the old Summit Burnett Studios here in Dallas, where the Stones and Rod Stewart and all these guys have recorded. And and so I ended up cutting an album that got some airplay here in Dallas, and I was like, so this is all before. Yeah, this is all previous to grad school and the pilot thing, and I got offered several national touring act deals, but then I was like, do I really want to be eating dinner off the floor of a bus? Right. Does that really? But I was in I got an article. I was in Guitar World magazine and was on the radio, and it was fun. It was cool. The most straight-laced rock guitarist in the history of the world. the other local acts around here derisively gave us the nickname God Halen, because here's this kid who played like Eddie Van Halen but was like super straight-laced and everything. And
how did you learn how to play? Was it also your grandpa's influence?
I was given a guitar at age 3.
At age 3, okay.
By my grandmother on the other side of the family, and just always had a guitar in my hand growing up. Started taking lessons at 6, and really, really got serious about it. I was a dual sport guy in high school, and so I was at school all the time, and I needed something. So I was either reading. When I got home, I was either reading or playing my guitar, because it was just a great release. And my poor mom having to listen, because when you start, you don't sound very good. No. It is not fun. So for her at least, but man, I would play until I'd play till my fingers bled.
Yeah.
And I guess I got to quit. Wait till tomorrow. Scab over.
Mm-hmm. Amazing.
Yeah, it was fun.
What is your favorite guitar that you have?
Man, they're all my favorite. They're like kids. So this is a Gibson. I'm a huge Clapton fan. And there's a very famous, I'm a huge early Clapton fan. I mean, the rest of the stuff is great. But there's a very famous, he was in a band called Cream in the late 60s, which after he was in the Yardbirds. And his last concert, which was at the Royal Albert Hall with Cream, he played a 1964 Gibson 335. And this is Gibson's recreation of that exact guitar. I even have, because I'm a nerd, the same strap that Clapton played at that concert. But we need some. But so if you've ever heard he recorded this on that show, and golly, I'm cold. This is gonna suck. Gosh, Ron, you're not very good. So Crossroads, but this guitar is between. I mean, again, I love them all, but this guitar really, honestly sounds. It's just got this real smooth, like Larry Carlton plays a 335. The guy played with Steely Dan forever and a bunch of other stuff. Big studio player, but it's just got a great, very, very warm sound. So, and if it's turned off, the amplifier's turned off because it's a semi-hollow body. I can still hear it when I'm playing. So that's kind of fun.
The leaf blower guy decided to start literally just now. Yeah. This is like for the last 5 minutes. Going out there.
Yeah. We got yard guys in the back.
Yeah,
that's fun.
There you go.
And then this,
that one.
Then this is I don't need to plug it in, but this is a, Gibson. This is probably my nicest guitar. I don't know, it's a Gibson what they call an R9, but it's a 1959 Les Paul reissue, and it's got that beautiful top, African mahogany back, and this is, again, Clapton made these very famous when he played. Before he joined Cream, he was with John Mayall on the Blues Breakers. And he played one of these. Jimmy Page has a 1950. I think he has a 59 and a 60. But these are the ones that are actually from 1959. This one's like 5 or 6 years old. But the real ones are all, $500,000. They're Jason Isbell just got one that belonged to Ed King of Leonard Skinner fame, but Jason Isbell, and his is called Red Eye because it's got this funky red spot right here. But
that's cool.
This is a great guitar. Again, very good. Responds differently, but sounds very similar to the 335.
What do you like to play, Ron?
Well, I got a little notoriety when I was young for being able to play a lot like Eddie Van Halen. So I love playing like Eric Johnson, Alan Holdsworth, Eric Clapton. But when I actually ended up doing some work with Van Halen for Eddie Van Halen. Demoing his guitars for the guitar show circuit in the 90s. I was a hedge fund guy, but I would get asked by his management, gal named Barbara Page, approached me, hey, you know how to play this? So I'd go to guitar shows and play his guitar through his amp. It's when he went to PV. This was in the early 90s or mid 90s, I guess, 94, 95, somewhere in that time frame. And so that was fun. And I got to meet Eddie Van Halen, and that's probably what I'm best at. I would love to think I could play, chicken picking like Brad Paisley.
Sure.
But I could fake it a little bit. But
you want to give us a little demo of Van Halen?
Oh my gosh!
Come on.
Yeah. Let me get a guitar that's more.
Sure.
More.
Get whatever you want
for that.
We can keep just jamming over the jam.
So this is a replica. Kind of a dead nuts, even down to not the strap. Ed was weird. Ed would put eye hooks in his where the strap buttons were supposed to be, eye hooks, the metal thing, and he would take a dog strap and use it as a guitar strap and hook it into the eye hooks. But that's noisy as all get out. But this is a replica when Eddie went in the 80s to Kramer. He was playing Charvel's and Warmoth Park guitars, but he went to Kramer. This was a replica of the guitar they built for him. A guy, what's the name of the guy who built that for him? I'm blanking right now. Dennis Berardi owned Kramer, but that's not who built the guitar. But anyway, this is a replica of that down to, and I did not build this. I've built guitars in the past, but the guy who, there's all kinds of weird minutia about it that I won't bore you with, but anyway, golly, playing like Van Halen, y'all really. Let me see if I can
cold into Van Halen.
Let me see if
you can warm up with whatever you want.
Let me see if, golly, I am cold. Let's see.
That's nice.
Very cold. Very cold. The engineer on the session would have been like, we need to recut that. But and then everybody. It was cool when he first did it. Now everybody can do it, but it's. So And then, that's his horse. I was trying to think if I know. But that's enough of that.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah. So this is a fun guitar.
Did you come up with your originals as well?
Oh yeah. Although I had a whole record and it was all original. I still write. This was going to be the bed for some music on a deal, but I think I'm gonna just release it as mine. But I have a. Oh, that's loud. Hold on. Anyway,
awesome.
Yeah,
Very nice.
all kinds of stuff. That's supposed to be played on a Strat, but
I wouldn't know better, Ron. So to me, all sounds amazing.
yeah, you're very kind. But anyway, my wife comes up here and just kind of shakes her head and then walks back out. I saw a funny thing. I saw a funny Instagram reel the other day about guys who collect guitars explaining it to other people, and he was comparing it to a obvious schizophrenic who is has a beach ball collection. Well, you see, this one is made,
Right.
So I know
Minor differences.
yeah, exactly. I know it's all whatever. They all have 6 strings and they all have, they all make noise. But
Yeah, man, that's awesome.
yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, we need to do before we end here. We need to do a little tour of this room because this room is filled with treasures that I'm sure we could spend like a half hour on each section of the room. For people who can't see it, we'll do a little tour here in a minute. But
Sure.
I'm seeing like guitars. There's signed footballs and baseballs up there. There's an ACOG scope.
What list do you want me on now?
It's like a signed, what is that, a chair?
Yeah, Nolan Ryan sound that.
Yeah.
So that's a chair from Arlington Stadium where the Rangers used to play. I mean, way back before 1994. And it, when they tore down the stadium, I got a chair out of there because I saw so many games with my granddad, who meant the world to me.
Chair number 2.
Yeah, that wasn't the chair we sat in. We actually sat in the bleacher, the cheap seats.
Sure.
But anyway, that's what that is.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, good times.
Yeah, this is an easy place. Again, if I didn't love my wife as much as I do, this would be an easy place to just come and basically be a hermit all the time.
Sure.
Because I got my guitars, my amps, and all my books. And
Behind us, on that camera, you can see, I mean, it's just an amazing layout too.
Are there any particular rabbit trails you've discovered or have been running down recently?
No, I mean, I got asked to do a couple of pods on intertestamental history, which is kind of if I've got anything to offer as far as in biblical theology, that's kind of probably where it is. And so I've been doing some stuff on there. The hard thing is now, if you're good at computer, at laptop foo, so to speak, it's so easy to forget the source material, right? And just, oh, wait a minute, I got this here, I can just pull it straight. And but I got as a gift from somebody I won't mention, but we might have mentioned his name earlier. I got a gift of 3 first edition Neil Stevenson books. And so I've been spending some time up here reading those. And I love good fiction, especially historically based fiction, because you end up learning more than you think you are. And so that's kind of what I've been tearing through lately.
What's your favorite fiction book or favorites?
The Name of the Rose by Umberto Eco.
Okay.
Umberto Eco's my favorite fiction.
Really?
Amazing.
Okay.
And it's not close.
I have that on my shelf.
I was gonna
An
say-
Amazon order that never got read.
Absolutely fantastic. I mean, not to sound like a pretentious nerd. David Foster Wallace was incredibly talented. I loved Infinite Jest as much for the virtuistic writing as for the funny plot and characters. Sometimes it's nice, like if you were a couple 300 years ago and you enjoyed Paganini just for the just for the virtuosity of it, violinists who we're talking about. Sometimes I like reading guys who are just who can string amazing sentences together, and that was definitely David Foster Wallace. But as far as fiction, I'm a huge golden or post Golden Age sci-fi guy, so I love Larry Niven, Jerry Pournelle. I never got into Asimov as much, Arthur C. Clarke, but Niven and Pournelle especially really got me. I thought they were both incredible, and then of course Philip K. Dick and Robert Heinlein. But these were all, it's funny, all these amazing sci-fi writers were all just incredibly based. These were true rightists, and they would use their ability to create, to world build as a way to expound upon these ideas.
Yeah, there's a whole sci-fi section over there.
Yeah, over there. Well, that's my biblical theology and then sci-fi stuff.
That's cool.
Not the same thing.
Yeah.
So it was, I've got a lot of N.T. Wright and Doug Moo over there. I know guys on the right don't like N.T. Wright. He's not a politician and he's not a political theorist. Just realize that's not his game. Incredible biblical theologian though, and then Doug Moo, I could read and reread his analysis of Romans, unbelievable. But there's all kinds of guys over there, and then I was a big Clancy fan.
Nice,
read everything he wrote until he started not writing. When he died, and his books kept coming out, but they weren't obviously written by him.
Sure.
I mean, Clear and Present Danger, which is nothing like the movie, and Hunt for Red October, Patriot Games, Red Storm Rising. These are classics. So, what else? A smattering of.
Is there anything in your top 3 books that you would recommend that everyone read?
Name of the Rose by Eco. Foucault's Pendulum by Eco, which is its spiritual. It's not a sequel, but it's its spiritual sequel. Absolutely. And after that, there's The Road, probably.
By McCarthy?
Yeah.
Interesting. I've never heard you talk about this.
Yeah, I absolutely love Cormac. There's so many good guys on Cormac that I hesitate to talk about him because I feel like, a little bit of a pretender, but and then No Country for Old Men, which was maybe my favorite all-time movie, but absolutely fantastic book. And he's doing some things on several different levels. The Road is a lovely book about a man and his son. What does it mean to all these things about duty and everything? But No Country for Old Men goes deeper and really. I mean, I think he does. With that closing, he has the closing scene about the vision of his dad going forward, holding with a staff and a fire pot, basically. And it's obviously a play on Genesis 15 and 16 in there with the Abrahamic covenant where God walks through the pieces, who goes before us and everything. And Cormac would never have admitted that when he was alive, but I think that's clear that you can only go into the future in faith. Otherwise, you're going to pull the covers up above your eyes, especially the smarter you are, because all the intelligence gives you is the ability to see how small you are and how much sin there is in the world. Yeah. And it's frightening, but you go forth because there is a covenantal God who goes before you.
That was a book that I remember. I was about 12 or 13 whenever it came out, and I was flying to Canada to visit family that we have up there, and is the only like airport book. Well, it was the only book I've ever bought in an airport, and I bought it entirely because of the cover. And
Talking about the road, or
yeah, the road, yeah. And I, on the flight to Canada, I finished the whole thing. It was just incredible.
I read it one sitting as well.
Yeah, it was insane.
Stayed up. But
It was also my first Cormac book ever. I was like, oh, this looks like an interesting post-apocalyptic.
No punctuation. I don't even think there's capitalization in it.
I don't know.
Maybe not,
There's no punctuation for sure.
No punctuation.
No quotation. No quotes for like when characters are speaking. Right. Nothing. Yeah.
It's so raw.
Yeah. Have you read it?
I have.
Okay.
Yeah. Beautiful landscape descriptions. Yeah. Well, especially in Blood Meridian.
Sure.
Too. So Blood Meridian was the first Cormac.
Wow. Okay.
I was like, Josh, do
I take drugs? No, but I did. I did some crystal meth once. You're just jumping right into the deep end.
I couldn't believe it. I was in shock. It was like the most violent anything that I've ever read.
Yeah.
Across the board as well.
Yeah, he does some real deconstruction there. And again, I really don't feel qualified to do Cormac justice, but a real giant. I need to read his 2 books that were published right, at his death. I need to pick those up. I just haven't. So
that's on the fiction side. So we've done fiction. On politics, what books would you recommend people read? A handful.
Well, okay. So, History of Political Philosophy, that's edited by Strauss. See if you can get the original one that has Jaffe's piece on Aristotle. Jaffe had it pulled because he didn't agree with something, but the first edition has Strauss on Plato and Jaffe on Aristotle, and you can read the rest of it, but those are the 2 pieces. Absolutely, the history of, and you can find it. There's PDF online. You can find it. Got to read that. Whether you agree, I mean, Jaffe was an insufferable, arrogant prick, but unbelievable writer. I mean, you've just got to read it. Then you've absolutely got to read, if you've got to hide in your closet when you're reading it, do so, but you need to read Political Theology by Carl Schmitt. The concept of the political is good. That's the friend-enemy distinction. But the whole idea of political theology is so misunderstood. But how you understand theology is going to be, or how you understand politics is going to be shaped by how you understand God and his interaction with the world. That is 100%. Your politics reflects your theology. And yes, Carl Schmitt wrote that. And so political theology, concept of the political, the crisis of parliamentary democracy is good, a little less well written. Nomos of the Earth is his magnum opus, written later in life. It is terrific. It's dense. It's very good. So I recommend all that. And then The Republic and Plato's Laws, because the things you thought you understood about the Republic, he's going to set you straight in Laws. Go read that, and don't read it with the commentary of some left-leaning nitwit who's gonna, if you're gonna have somebody help you through those things, and make sure you find somebody who has their head screwed on straight. And then Aristotle, ethics. Aristotle's a much harder read because you're reading his class notes. We don't have his exoteric works. Those are all lost, probably because they were too good and we would worship them. But ethics is worth reading. That's all on now. Stuff that's anything by Gottfried, but especially Gottfried on fascism.
Paul Gottfried,
absolute. Terrific work. Here's the cliff notes. There's no such thing as modern fascism. Fascism was a whole state response to the threat of Bolshevism. There. Now you don't have to read. No, Gottfried's great. And then anything Michael Anton wrote, you can start with Flight 93, but that's not anywhere close to his best stuff. I mean, that's a compelling, great article, but Anton is fantastic. Whatever I would read, I would go and find all the works of Angelo Codevilla read all that on federalism. That was his great stuff. I know I'm going to be leaving out something, but these are the things that really and then find a very good, when you're studying your Bible, find a very good Bible commentator or teacher who understands that biblical theology and politics are handmaidens, not that they're completely separate. This modern idea that those are completely separate things that should never be mixed is fully modern, and it's fully liberal. So for me, that was Jim Jordan. Jim Jordan, who if you like Doug Wilson, Doug is a spiritual successor in a way to a lot of Jim's writings. Jim Jordan, Biblical Horizons, so Through New Eyes, his commentary on Judges, his book on his huge, thick commentary on Daniel, David Chilton on Revelation, Days of Vengeance. These biblical commentators understand that the search for the city on the hill, the search for a new politics are part and parcel of theology. Awesome. So that's my encouragement.
That's the reading list if you want to be like Ron Dodson.
Be very afraid.
Yeah. Dude, so good to have you on the pod, man. Thanks for coming on.
Hey, thanks for having me on, guys.
Let's do a quick tour of the room, and then we'll...
Yeah, absolutely.
We can keep the mics rolling.
Here's my SAE paddle. Yes, Sigma Alpha Epsilon. That theoretically was used on my backside. Here is there's an old picture of my dad and my stepmom, my brother, and my sister. But this is a picture. Oh, that's not the one I thought it was. A couple of trophies. I was believe it or not, all 5'7.5" of me. I was a point guard on the city championship basketball team, and then I won the club championship in doubles at my country club I used to be part of before my kids went to private school and I couldn't afford it anymore. This is a picture of me and my wife on the Mount of Olives overlooking the Temple Mount. There's the Dome of the Rock. And here's the olive grove that's still there. The smaller trees, not the taller trees. These are all of Calvin's commentaries. Everybody loves the Institutes. Give me his biblical commentaries. I think it's far superior. That's just me. My kids play piano. I dabble, but my kids play piano, so when they want to practice, they still come up here. And my youngest, who's been out of practice, actually wrote the notes on the keys the last time she was here. That was crazy. There's the backs of the seats of my seats, my old season tickets at Texas Stadium. I coach soccer, and these are signed balls. One I helped coach very lightly. I mean, it was very nice of them to send a ball, but the Haitian handicapped, the handicapped Haitian national team. And these guys, Haiti is a mess, but these guys were amazing that they were handicapped and still could compete at that level, and all believers, French. And then I helped coach a session of a pro team from Central America, and that's the ball they signed. There's some old pictures of me with long hair when I was playing guitar. You don't want to see those.
No, you gotta get those.
Close the ball.
Yeah, so that's when I was in Guitar World magazine, and then that's from my photo shoot from a magazine article I did.
Amazing.
I was in. This is Guitar Corner over here. So a bunch of my electrics in the rack over there, a bunch of these effects pedals that I sometimes use. It depends on if I've got a session that needs a particular sound, I'll use one of those. And this is my Bogner, my little Ecstasy. So it's a 50 watt that runs through these two speakers. And then this is my baby. This is 1968 Marshall Super Lead replica that George Metropolis did for me, and that amp that's heaven. That's like the heavens opening up. It's awesome. So this has both these speaker cabinets. All these speaker cabinets have late 60s Celestion Pulsonic speakers, and so they sound really good.
Here's the ACOG that we talked about earlier.
Yeah. I don't honestly remember how I got that. Somebody owed me something. But anyway, some of these books are my kids and everything, but a lot of kids study Bibles. This one is awesome. The Big Picture Story Bible. I'd take my kids through this when they were little. You can see how worn the pages are, and it was just amazing. That'll bring tears to my eyes. And then what? Stuff you pick up as you're growing. Right, for a guy my age, I'm 57. Reagan, we didn't know any better. Reagan did a bunch of goofy things, but I've got Reagan's diaries, and this is his biography. His diaries are fantastic because how he interacted with the Russians was pretty interesting. But
here's the chair we talked about earlier.
Yeah,
that's sweet.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. I've been offered some decent money for that. But, here's Voss on the Westminster Larger Catechism. This is nothing earth-shattering. There's some R.C. Sproul in here. Here's Ed Welch. The little bit of seminary that I did, the classes that I did were under Ed Welch in abnormal psychology. And you go, why are there seminary classes on abnormal psychology? Because psychology is an area where, unless you have your theology straight, you can really mess somebody up. And I was doing a ton of meeting with young guys. Here's some Piper. John drives me crazy sometimes, but he's a dear believer, so that's Desiring God. I'm trying to see what morning and evening. This is not earth-shattering stuff. Cal Thomas. But I'm a huge William Gibson fan, and he is an utter leftist, but love the way he wrote. Here's one of the books I highly recommended: Foucault's Pendulum.
There you go.
Umberto Eco. C.S. Lewis, Graham Greene. If you haven't read The Kingdom and the Power, amazing. And a bunch of pilot stuff. And here's my. Let's see here. Which one is this? Hopefully it's the right one and not the one that'll get me in trouble. Oh, this is the one that'll get me in trouble. That's okay. Statute of limitations, right? Let me see if I have the cover page of this. You get a kick out of this. Oh, maybe I don't have it anymore. Well, anyway, this is the -30. No, this is the A1. Hold on. It's this one. These are my F-16 flight manuals.
That's awesome.
Amazing.
So, all right, that's about it.
That's it. Thanks, Ron.
You bet.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the New Founding Podcast. New Founding has become a rallying point for founders and investors who are taking serious bets in the face of a stagnant business culture. Our venture fund backs founders building dynamic companies, powered by American ideals and a positive national vision. These are the kinds of founders that embody the optimism and competence of the people who come on this podcast. If you're interested in investing in our fund, check out newfounding.com/venture fund and follow the link to apply.